Cowboys have had themselves a hell of an offseason so far. And the Cowboys, for the first time, I think in a long time for a lot of people, Reg, got better in March. So the truckrate.com text line, 877-881-1053. How would you grade the Dallas Cowboys offseason thus far based on the moves that they have made, acquiring Brandin Cooks, acquiring Stephon Gilmore, retaining Donovan Wilson and Leighton Vander Esch, re-signing Dante Fowler Jr., among other moves that this team has made?
Oh, I thought you were going to keep. I was like, I wonder how many of these he's going to rattle off the top.
I had a few more, but I wanted to cut it off because we got a 4-hour show to do. And at the same time, your thoughts, Reg, on the Cowboys offseason grades thus far.
Can I clarify the landscape real quick from UKG? All right, so when we establish this grade, are we doing it based off of just what they have thus far, or am I just doing this as an offseason grade, understanding that the draft has not happened yet?
Oh, take it where you want to. I'm interested in this.
That is not an answer, but okay, that's fine.
Reg Attitula then.
That's fair. You know what I deserve? I really do deserve that because I've hit you with that many a time. And the first time you hit me with that, I had the nerve to be upset. Okay, so if we're just going to start with a grade, I'm going to go ahead and say A-.
Oh, okay.
And it's high praise. I understand that. Right? Obviously, you have not gotten to the place where you have great responses or great decisions for every single place, right? So your cornerbacks, really good, right? Your defense, and as a whole, looks pretty good. You've managed to maintain some institutional knowledge there. Obviously, at your main position where you talk about your middle linebacker, that's kind of like the spine of the defense, and also like has the ability to get everybody in the right place. Leighton Vander Esch was very important for your team last year, having, bolstering that cornerback spot, as I mentioned. Your safeties, making sure that you have some consistency there, specifically because safety play matters to Dan Quinn in the way that you go about this, right? Those things were done well. You managed to address one of the things that people complained about all season long, which was weapons for your quarterback, right? All of these things were taken care of. And you seem to really go all in on the idea that you are going to make sure that there's an answer for every hole on the defense, even if it is not the perfect answer. The problem is interior defensive line is still there. And there is an expectation that Jonathan Hankins is a possibility there. Maybe Jonathan Hankins is dragging his feet. Maybe the Cowboys are, whatever. That is not answered yet. So that's something that I would like to see figured out. Interior offensive line. Still something I would like to see figured out. Yes, you can maybe do the shuffling, what the nice head coach would like to call fantasy football, right? Maybe you want to do some of that to get your offensive line. But one thing we know, one, you have some guys that are injury prone on the offensive line. But two, you also understand that offensive line injuries are going to happen in this league. We understand that with the modern NFL. So those are things that I would like to see addressed, but you still have an opportunity to address those in the draft. So overall, I think that they've been proactive while also being, I don't want to say hesitant. That's not the right word, but I can't find the right word. My brain's working. It's working. It's not finding the right word. But they've been proactive. They've been cautiously proactive. Right? They've went out. They've addressed some spots, but also done so within the bounds of what they typically want to do, which is not overspend in certain areas. I understand when I say overspend in the Cowboys, we're gonna go to some places, but they made sure to not do too much, not tax themselves, but also address the things that they want within the price point that they want. I think that all things considered, that's an A- in my book.
I'll give them a solid A because I look at what they did acquiring Brandin Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. We'll start off with in terms of the trade market. You filled two positions of need with two very good football players, even as they are getting later into their career. Stephon Gilmore still a very productive player. Brandin Cooks, a walking 1,000-yard receiver most of the time wherever he goes. And with Dak Prescott hopefully cutting down on the turnover problem, I should say, you're going to have a 1-2 punch in CeeDee Lamb and Brandin Cooks that takes pressure off of Michael Gallup in that number 2 role.
And the Brandin Cooks should actually take pressure off of Dak Prescott. Mm-hmm. You know that Dak Prescott had a really terrible separation rate for his wide receivers. Mm-hmm. And Brandin Cooks is a dude who can get some separation.
Kimes, that's right.
So that also matters.
So with his ability to make things easier for Dak by getting the kind of separation that his receivers could not get for him this past year, you're going to hopefully see some more open throwing lanes for Dak to be able to make things happen while the accuracy being where it needs to be. And then on the defensive side, you fortified your defense. You got a corner opposite of Trayvon Diggs. That to me is going to be so fascinating watching those two work opposite of each other, because as an offense now, you're looking at one guy on one side with Trayvon Diggs who loves to go and pick off the football. Yes, you can get him every now and then on a double move or two, but I think the mentoring that he's going to get from Stephon Gilmore in making sure that he is becoming a more complete corner, I think you'll see some growth there in terms of the discipline from Trayvon Diggs. And then you got a former defensive player of the year in Stephon Gilmore, who has been there, done that, and will still have something left to be able to make real contributions on this defense. So then you go and get, Ronald Jones, a depth piece in your backfield. You get some offensive line help. You retain your own. And I think being able to retain Donovan Wilson and Leighton Vander Esch, particularly Donovan Wilson, I think is key given the three-headed monster that you have with Malik Hooker, Jaron Kearse, and Donovan Wilson. The continuity continues to grow for this defense, which I think was a hallmark of the Seattle Seahawks Legion of Boom defenses. Not saying that. I was
about to say, what are we invoking here?
Not to say that these three are on the same talent level of what Seattle had. My point being the continuity that those defenses had under Dan Quinn and how that ultimately came to fruition for several years of sustained excellence on the defensive end. You're seeing that being built here in Dallas under Dan Quinn and his defense. So, yeah, I give the Cowboys a solid A for what they've done and what they're able to do now in the draft, being able to have the draft wide open to them the way that they want to based on how they stack their board potentially.
Yeah, I largely agree with you. Would you like to go to the truckwreck.com text line and see where people maybe disagree in some ways from the 817? Y'all say the same thing every year about wide receiver. They can't get separation. A new wide receiver won't help, just like Amari didn't help. It's the trash system. KG, you say?
That's a lie, number one, because you look at the numbers of Dak Prescott with Amari Cooper on the same football team. Dak Prescott had a QB rating of nearly 103. 88 touchdown passes while Amari Cooper was with this offense. Don't tell me that Amari Cooper didn't help around here. The Cowboys were too ridiculous in their own, I could have used other words, but they were too ridiculous in their own thoughts to think just because a dude maybe doesn't practice all that often, maybe he didn't get the jab the way that they wanted him to get it, that he wasn't valuable around here anymore. The point is, you've got me started on Amari Cooper, and I was trying to really have a good show without,
I shouldn't have wound you up. That's my fault.
But I just say the last thing I'll say on this when it comes to Amari Cooper in this segment here, I will forever crush the Cowboys for moving on from Amari Cooper. Not to say that they didn't make up for it by now getting Brandin Cooks, but the move at the time, and you could talk to a Cowboy beat writer. Hell, Stephen Jones has admitted as much as so far this offseason that it was a mistake to move on from Amari Cooper. So that's all that I'm saying about that.
I mean, speaking of grades, we talk about trades. NFL.com and Mark Sessler did some trade grades, and for both of these trades, Brandin Cooks, Stephon Gilmore. Brandin Cooks is an A for the Cowboys' perspective. Stephon Gilmore is an A+, right? It seems like widely people look around at all these moves and say that they are positives, and not just positives, really good moves. And I understand the sarcasm that's here from the 972. Yep, all these bargain players will definitely make the Cowboys a contender. I think one of the places where at least KG is, you look around and you say, what does the rest of the NFC in general have? And it's a little bit of a down year, at least from what we could tell right now, right? On top of that, you were a good team before, and there were some things that you need to make some moves on. And again, there are still some places where they need to make sure that they fortify with the draft, right? But the idea that they are doing the right things matters here, right? Like, they are making the right moves, and that matters here. And obviously, these are moves that could be impact moves. Now, the thing about it is, yes, Brandin Cooks is, 27, and has been around a little bit. That's a dude who is a four-time Pro Bowler. Am I remembering correctly, or am I mixing?
Brandin Cooks, I believe, is 30. In terms of his age?
I'm mixing people up because I was definitely looking someone else up earlier that was 27. My apologies. But Brandin Cooks, 30 years old. Mm-hmm. Actually, they were a Pro Bowler. That's right. He's one of the best players to have not gotten a Pro Bowl because he has had 6 Pro Bowl seasons, or 6,000-yard seasons. I keep saying Pro Bowl. 6,000-yard seasons in his career.
He'll be 30 in September. Right now, he's age 29. Yeah, he'll be 30 in September, late September, for Brandin Cooks.
All right, that's a player that matters. That's a player that can help, especially when it opens your best player up to be where he needs to be in CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, we all understand, is best. Well, maybe not best, but he can really do great things in the slot. Right? You look up and you say, where the best defensive cornerbacks, they're not going to be playing in the slot. He's often going to get a good matchup and the widest space on the field to work if he's in the slot. Brandin Cooks gives you the opportunity to have CD in the slot a good amount of the time. That's part of what you're looking for here, right? So that's some of what he does. You talk about Stephon Gilmore. How many times do people pop up and were they upset about Anthony Brown? You thought this was a very good defense last year, and then there's your weak link. When you make that weak link significantly stronger with Stephon Gilmore, that matters. And I understand that these end up being like one-year deals of sorts, which I wonder how people feel about that portion of it, right? Let me ask you this, because I think you could view it two ways. You could view it as they view themselves as contenders, so they're pushing their version of all in on the season.
I like the way you put that.
While also, you could also view it as they are cautiously optimistic where they think they can be some level of good. However, they're not tying anything down for the future in case this needs to swing a different way, in case I don't know about tear it down, because I don't know that I haven't known the Cowboys to be a team that's like, all right, now we're going to tear it down, but that they're not pot committed on some of these things, especially the moves that they're making in this offseason. How do you view it, KG?
Yeah, I think you look at Cooks and the restructuring of his deal already. And obviously for Stephon Gilmore, these are essentially one-year commitments here. And as you mentioned, their version of going all in by getting veterans at positions of need while still allowing for flexibility to be able to find players within the draft and then going into 2024 with the ability to sign other guys as the salary cap continues to go up. But more importantly, the retaining of your own, because, oh, that's right, Micah Parsons, and if you don't do anything with CeeDee Lamb this year, and Trayvon Diggs, all three of those gentlemen, namely Micah Parsons, is going to be needing a new contract extension.
Yeah.
Trayvon Diggs is going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year,
right,
if they don't get an extension done. And CeeDee Lamb also is going to be needing a new contract if you decide to, not go along with his fifth-year option and rip the thing up and go ahead and give him a new deal after this upcoming year. So there's a lot of things that you look at from a financial standpoint the Cowboys are looking ahead toward that allows them to be able to have Stephon Gilmore and Brandin Cooks here, where if things don't work out, you can move on from them.
Did you give a letter grade on this?
I gave it a solid A.
I'm surprised because you seem like you still upset that they didn't get DeAndre Hopkins with the news that we gotten today.
Well, I'm trying to let it go because there is a report from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated that the Arizona Cardinals are not going to get what they thought they were for DeAndre Hopkins, which is a second-round pick and a player of significance. And the deal that they are possibly going to get, or most likely going to get, is something closer to what the Cowboys did in acquiring Brandin Cooks, to which I say, of course they are. And the Cowboys set the market here based on what they were able to do in getting Brandin Cooks. But I can't fault them. They made a move. You can't wait and sit back and wait for something to materialize. If they felt like this was a good deal that was on the table for them to get a very good, productive player, then you make the move. We'll see. I think a lot of this for me depends on where DeAndre Hopkins actually lands. Because if, let's say, DeAndre winds up in Kansas City, which Patrick Mahomes, and all they had to give up was a fourth or a fifth to get him, and then they go back it up by signing Odell Beckham Jr. on top of that, you might hear a different tune from me, a week or two.
So you're saying the Cowboys are supposed to stop that? It's supposed to also run interference on other teams' deals?
No, it's not necessarily that. It's just the fact that quarterback would wind up with DeAndre Hopkins, let's just say for conversation's sake, and Odell Beckham Jr. on the same team. Like Thanos, got every Infinity Stone again.
You realize you're looking for reasons to be mad right now.
No, that's what I'm trying not to do.
Okay, then
I'm trying not to do.
Let me help you out.
I'm trying not
One thing to also remember in this false dichotomy of Brandin Cooks versus DeAndre Hopkins, because again, false dichotomy, right? Our friend A-Ro on the YouTube chat typed one word, and I know exactly what they're talking about: speed.
Yes.
And Brandin Cooks ran a 4.340 when he ran this 40. Now, of course, does that mean he's still running the exact 4.3? I doubt it, right? People train in particular to make sure that 40 is exactly what it needs to be. However, he still has that speed. That is something that we talked to Aaron Wilson about it, right? Aaron Wilson?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to make sure I had his name right because I've been getting things wrong in this segment. But we talked to him about it a couple days ago, and he mentioned, right, like GPS will tell you that speed still remains.
It's still there.
And it doesn't just remain in the first quarter or in the second quarter, all the way through fourth quarters of games, that speed remains there. That is an element that you haven't had in the ways that you need for a little while for the Cowboys, right? That is an added element that DeAndre Hopkins was not going to bring, although he is like an always open all-star, right? So there's absolutely value to having Brandin Cooks with this offense and with this team. And I think that this front office obviously deserves some level of flowers for the ways that they've gone about this. Don't get complacent. Make sure to finish it out with the draft, which of course is their favorite thing to do. You know how like you have a task, you have your chore list, and there's some things on them that you despise, and there's some things that you like. It feels like the Cowboys have gotten through the portion for the most part that they don't like, and they're like, oh yeah, I get to sweep the kitchen or whatever, right? Whatever the most fun portion of that is, right? And that's what we seem like we are at, because they love doing this draft thing. I just hope that they nail it, because if they do that, they've given themselves the maximum opportunity to be the best Cowboys that they can be, which is all that the front office portion can be.